Welcome everyone to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast. I'm a networking expert and the author of the upcoming book, No Strangers, How to Build Community, One Relationship at a Time. My why is the pursuit of mastery, and the goal of this podcast is to lock arms on a lifelong mission of daily personal growth to become the best version of ourselves. So let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the podcast. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are joined by a very special guest. He was the guitarist and singer for the chart-topping Canadian rock band Staggered Crossing, and he's gone on to have an incredible solo career, culminating in the two-time Juno-nominated album The Ridge in 2020. So welcome to the podcast, Julian Taylor. Julian, how are you? And how good does it feel to have recently released your new single, Seeds?
I'm great. Thank you for asking, Joel. I'm ecstatic about the response to the single so far, and just hope that the message gets out there. I think it's a pretty important message, and I really spent a lot of time with this record, this new record, for a couple of reasons. I had something to say, and I really wanted to see if I could outdo myself after the last one.
Yeah, no pressure after having the most critically acclaimed album of your career come out last, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we're gonna do a deep dive. We're gonna go through your entire history, your entire discography, and we're gonna spend a lot of time on that album, The Ridge, and on the new single and the upcoming album. I like to start by sharing with our listeners how I know the guests. So it shows the power of networking and building communities and relationships. So in our case, this goes back to when I was 16. Staggered Crossing had massive single Further Again. That was my jam. I remember at 16, I used to play that all the time. When that riff came on, I'd lose my mind. Wow. So that's where this all starts for me, is all the way back with Staggered Crossing.
I know that.
Yeah. Man, there's going to be a lot of stuff that you don't know about that's going to come up in this. I have some surprises for you. And then I just looked through our messaging history, and our messaging history goes back 8 years. And this is the first message we ever had. So I texted, "Great show last night, Julian. I was in the front row. I'm friends with Steve York and Tony Rabaleo." And you responded, "Thanks, Joel. I appreciate it. Any friend of those guys is a friend of mine." So if I'm a detective, if those two names are involved, you must have been performing at the supermarket in Kensington Market, Toronto, because those guys are always there doing the free fall open mics. So
I did frequent the free fall open mics. I haven't for a couple of years, and they also frequented my open stage, which was it's called Riverboat right now, but back then it was just at Dora Keogh Irish Pub on the Danforth every Monday night. So yeah, Sunday night you could hit supermarket, Monday night you could hit Dora's, and we all sort of just connected that way.
Amazing. So that's where I first saw you solo, and I hadn't made the connection that you were the singer of Staggered Crossing that I loved.
I do remember that.
Yeah. And then about 4 years ago, so I was living in Mississauga, and I started dating a girl from Georgetown. So one day we're in Georgetown, and she goes, "Hey, there's this pub downtown. We should go there and check it out. It's pretty cool. It's hip. It's happening." So we go out. We're there. We're getting food and drinks. And then Julian Taylor's performing. It was like the best random show up of all time for us.
That's Uncorked on Main, right?
That's the one. Yeah.
I remember that place. Is it still there?
I'm not sure, to be honest. It's been a few years since I've been with her, so no reason to go back to Georgetown for me unless you're going to play again. And so we talked a little bit after that show, so we connected again. Then it was years later that I connected the two, that you were the singer of Staggered Crossing. And from that moment until now, I still kind of fangirl out a little bit, knowing that you're the voice from that hit single. And the last
voice, yes.
Yeah. And the last time, the last connection that we made was you were kind enough to provide a quote for amazing musician Casey Roberts from Toronto a few episodes ago on the podcast.
I love Casey Roberts. Yeah.
Casey's the best. So that is our history for our listeners to know how we ended up here today. So most people, they look at you, they see this successful musician, solo artist, successful in a band, Juno nominations, but that's not the beginning of your story. So let's go back to the start. Where does this love of music come from? And do you have maybe an earliest musical memory?
I started playing piano when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And ever since I was a kid, I would just hum things and make little tunes up. There are early recordings of me making things up for sure. I remember singing Away in the Manger at the church choir. That was my first solo. I think I was 5. I'd have to ask my parents exactly how old I was. But yeah, my family's pretty musical. My uncle Brainerd, or rather he's my cousin, but he's my uncle as well. So he's the conductor of Nathaniel Jack Chorale. And my cousins played on the last 2 records, like the rhythm section, Barry and Jean on the Ridge, and then now Beyond the Reservoir. And a lot of my cousins all sang in the choir, and it's just been a musical endeavor from the very beginning. My dad's a piano player too. He's great. He's really good. Very gifted.
So you started on piano. How did you gravitate towards guitar and then singing?
Well, I was always singing, and I could always sing while playing the piano as well. But once I got a little bit older, and I went to overnight camp and things like that, and parties and stuff like that, I just really felt the need to pick up the acoustic guitar. I was listening to music, like my mom gave me a Jim Croce tape. I remember that vividly, as well as Cat Stevens, James Taylor, Paul Simon and Simon and Garfunkel, Odetta, Richie Havens. These folk singers sort of really piqued my interest, and I thought that I could try that too, and that's what I did.
Can we acknowledge how amazing your mom's choice of music is? I mean, those are all-time great singer-songwriters you just named.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we had a lot of music in the house. Nat King Cole was my dad's favorite singer, and he's an incredible piano player as well. My grandfather listened to lots of blues records and jazz records, and my mom listened to my mom was mostly Motown and Stax, and then singer-songwriters. Like, she would listen to Willie Dunn, but she'd also listen to the Supremes and the Ronettes and things like that. Marvin Gaye.
So from an early age, you were already playing music, but was there anything that you wanted to be when you grew up before wanting to be a musician, or has it always from the start you knew?
No, at one point I wanted to be a fireman.
All right.
Yeah, I must have been about 5 around that time. And I used to wear all sorts of hats. Hats were my thing. They still kind of are, but I used to have a fireman's hat that I wore all the time. And what else? I wanted to be a writer. I had attended university for English literature, and I was thinking of going into journalism, and then Staggered Crossing got signed. And the nice thing is that I think that by being a musician and by being a songwriter, I got to be a writer too. So, yeah.
Have you ever considered still writing a book? I mean, I'm sure you have tons of stories from the last few decades in the music industry.
I've been asked. I've been asked to write a book by a few people, and I've been asked to write a children's book as well. At the moment, I'm not ready to write a novel, like a nonfiction novel. Maybe I could write a fiction novel. Who knows? Because that might be fun to like escape my life sometimes. But I've definitely considered this children's book. I need to get out of the weeds with the release of the new record and stuff like that. But yeah.
I think a children's book is probably a good start, because a standard book can take 2 to 3 years to write. And now with you and your music career, that would be the priority, right? To keep putting out these great albums.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Hopefully they're great.
That's the goal anyways.
Yeah.
If you and I were friends at 16 years old and you invited me over to your place to listen to some music, what albums would you be spinning for me?
Definitely Midnight Marauders by Tribe Called Quest would have definitely been there. Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee is my favorite record. They're self-titled. I probably would have introduced you to that. I still do introduce people to that. Um, Miles Davis in a Silent Way. I just think it's super brilliant and cool. And we probably would have smoked a doobie. So that would have been one of the records that we would have checked out for sure. What else? Those three for sure. They don't seem to they're always in my collection, and they're always records I dig. I mean, now I listen to In a Silent Way and I do yoga. So things have changed a little bit.
Yeah, you're a different man. Kids tend to change things a little bit, I suppose.
Yeah.
So from say 16 years old, when people normally go out and get a job, up until the time where you had success with Staggered Crossing, what were all the jobs that you had, and were there any like standout atrocious jobs that our listeners will find amusing to know that it wasn't just all roses for you all the way, you know?
Well, no, I've been a busboy many times. I've been a bartender many a times. I worked at a Starbucks as a barista, which I didn't love, and it ruined coffee for me. I don't like coffee. Um, what else? The one job that sticks out as a memory is because it was this. I was doing this job. And it was the day that September 11th, and I remember the job and the day so vividly because of what happened. But I remember I used to actually deliver. I'd get up in the morning really early and deliver meals to daycares. That was one of my gigs, and I remember delivering them to the daycares on that day and listening to the radio and everything being canceled.
Yeah, I remember being in science class when September 11 everything went down
and everything canceled. Everybody stopped, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Where were you when the world stopped turning, kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. So that's one job I remember. Sure.
And how early on did you know that you had a gift as a musician that people might be interested in seeing you or maybe listening to your music, and that this is something you would actually could pursue as a career?
Well, I never really thought that I could pursue it. I just thought that I might as well give it a try. I still think that you know my musical theory isn't as strong as I'd like it to be. I still have time, obviously, and when it comes to lyrics and things like that, I think that I've gotten a little bit better at it over time as well. But I guess around 18 years old, just sitting around and playing by campfires and things like that, and making up my first couple of songs. When I started making up my first couple of songs, classmates and family members and everybody would say, "Oh, wow, that's not bad. You should keep doing that." And so I did. But I never really thought, that I would end up sustaining a career out of my talent. I always thought that I'd sustain a career out of my drive. And fortunately, I had a little bit of both, and they've complemented each other well.
So as a guitarist and a singer, who were your musical heroes growing up? We all have kind of the guitar gods that we look to when we're young. And then do you have different musical heroes now that you're older?
Like just who play guitar?
Yeah. I mean, just who inspired you when you were, learning to play the guitar and the piano and singing? Like for me, you look at the guitar gods like, Jimmy Page or whoever.
Right. I was never really into like those guys. I liked the music. I liked Led Zeppelin, but I was never really trying to emulate or become anything like them at all. Neil Young was a huge influence from an acoustic guitar standpoint, for sure. And that translated into the electric guitar. When I started playing the electric guitar, I think that I gravitated to Robbie Robertson and his way of playing. And then I guess what ended up happening was, Staggered Crossing did have some moments where we got a little harder and turned things up. And I think that the grunge movement did have a lot to do with that. even though
The early 90s.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I was more of a hip hop fan than I was an early grunge fan. But like the first couple of big records that came out, that like the Nevermind, 10, and Bad Motorfinger, I didn't get it. I wasn't a huge fan. I did the second Nirvana record. I totally got that. When All Apologies came out, I got that, and I finally became a Nirvana fan when the Unplugged thing came out as well, and then backtracked. And Versus, which was the second Pro Jam record, was more appealing to me than the first as well.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. And so you mentioned you started by being a fan of hip hop. Is there any chance that you ever do anything in hip hop?
I've guested on some things. Yeah, I've never done any emceeing, but I've guested as a melodic voice on a few tracks. I did something with a cat named Fat Owl. I've done something with David Strickland. Um, there may be one or two others that I've done, but I can't remember.
So you'd never consider putting out a legit hip hop album?
You never know, man.
Yeah, never say never, I guess.
It'll probably stink to the high heavens, but
musicians a lot of times are when we're growing up, we're told, get that good education, get a normal job. There's that pressure that, a career in the music industry that's a hobby, that's a dream, that's not realistic. Did you ever have that kind of that outside resistance? And if so, how did you kind of get past that?
Sure. Every parent's going to tell their kids to have a backup plan if they're good parents. Also, if they're good parents, they will support you in what you're really wanting to do. And so my folks did. And so did my extended family as well. And my friends have all been very supportive. So there's been really hard years for sure. I certainly was disenchanted with the music industry and performing for a long time. And that's when I just didn't, from about, I don't know, for about 4 years or 5 years, and ended up just bartending and doing that until finally I decided that it was time to return to it. I'm glad I did. But, things, you put out records and you hope for the best. And I've been rather fortunate, and I'm extremely honored and grateful and humbled by the response to these records that I put out. But am I, a millionaire? No. But I have great people who support me. So in that way, I would say, yeah, maybe I am.
I guess the backup plan is you can always be a fireman if you need to.
I've got to cut this first.
Is that a rule? I guess that would catch flames pretty quick, or what?
I think so. I think we'd have to figure something out about my hair.
The flames might get worse if you get in the building as a fireman with your hair.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know what to do. I can't try to keep it up in some way, shape, or form. There we go.
There you go. We'll make it work. I reached out and got a little support for this podcast. So we have a few surprises here for you. And here's surprise number one. So I have a few kind words from our mutual friend, Casey Roberts. So he was the special guest on episode number 54 of the podcast. And what's awesome about him, besides him being just like a world-class musician, is the top 10 podcasts that I've ever done as far as popularity for downloads. All of the top 10 are signed artists that are gold, platinum, or multi-platinum, except Casey Roberts is in there. That's how big his fan base is. So I was very pleasantly surprised, and it blew me away the amount of love and support that guy has, which is cool. So here are some words from Casey Roberts. It's a long quote, so just hang tight. Here we go. So Casey says, I met Julian when I was 14 on a bus home from North Toronto High School, the 61A Avenue Road North bus, just to be specific in case you think he's lying. He says, Julian was a couple years older than me, and he had the kind of outward spirit that transcends the monotony of daily situations, like a tired and jam-packed bus ride home from school. He would say hello and joke around with people he didn't know on the bus, like myself, and had a positive energy that made you want to know him. One of my close friends in high school, Jocelyn Black, was the sister of the bass player in his band Staggered Crossing. I watched as they lit their rock and roll fire across the country. Now I frequently enjoy listening to his beautiful solo music. Julian has always been an inspiring and influential artist and musician to people like myself. He is a prolific, ever-evolving, storytelling songwriter who carries the torch of rock and roll, folk, and real heartfelt music. Also, he's a really nice person. And maybe that's the final ingredient that makes his music so special. From Casey Roberts.
That's very sweet. Thank you, Casey. I do remember the bus, the 61A. I know it.
That's a famous bus. That's history in the making right there. Let's dive into Staggered Crossing, and then we'll move into the Julian Taylor band and then to the solo stuff. So most guests that I have, they have maybe 3 albums, maybe 4 albums. And then there's Julian Taylor, where the discography, I had my work cut out for me listening to all this music, but I like a good challenge. So with Staggered Crossing, so you guys went to high school together. Like, that's how young you were when Staggered Crossing started. So you guys were maybe friends, but how did you decide to start a band together?
Literally, somebody came to the school with flyers saying that there was a battle of bands and that you could win prize money or recording time and things like that, or musical instruments. And we weren't a band before that flyer came to the school, and we were a band right after it became a flyer. And we played at the Elma Combo. That was my first gig in 1994, like first club gig. And yeah, we won. It was cool. So we got recording time, and we kept on doing a couple of those battle bands like Supernova and things like that way back in the mid 90s. And yeah, we just wanted to hang out and play tunes. And I was writing songs, and they sucked, but they weren't horrible.
They sucked, but they could have been worse, I guess.
Yeah, they weren't horrible.
Yeah, how amazing is it that your first show was at the legendary Elma Combo, which you've gone back to play since then?
Yeah, it's quite astonishing. I remember seeing Keith Richards' autograph in the green room, and that was the first thing that I did. I signed my name in that green room. Since then, the green room's gone, obviously, and the new building's been installed, and it's a gorgeous building. I've played there a few times now. Yeah, mostly just tape stuff. I haven't actually had a show there. It's been taped stuff.
The pandemic, right? It'll get you. You can't do well, maybe now you can do real shows, but you couldn't for a while. We'll touch on the effects of the pandemic on a touring musician's life in a little bit. But so you guys released a couple EPs between 96 and 2000. What opportunities started presenting themselves once you had recorded music that you could get out as kind of your business card for new opportunities?
Yeah, back then we did a 4-song EP, and it was called Mold. A few of the tracks are now on Spotify on the deluxe edition of the Staggered Crossings first record. And it was good. We had like this keg party in my parents' backyard, and I set up the garage to sell, a glass of beer with a tape. And it was just on a little tape. And I think people still might have it. There's maybe 200. I don't think I have one. Jeremy probably does. And maybe I do somewhere, but I'd have to really hunt for it. But the song that really took off was a song called Crazy People. And that was an infectious sort of pop rock song that really caught the ear of a gentleman by the name of Frank Davies. And Frank Davies was the CEO and president of a company called The Music Publisher, which was TMP. It was owned by Atlantis and Alliance Films. And he ended up coming to see us perform at an open stage, just really me. And I played some songs that would end up being on the next full-length record that Warner put out. And he just loved it so much that he offered me a publishing deal. I said that the others had to come with me, and he offered everybody in the band this publishing deal, and we gave him a year window to be able to find us a recording contract. Never really thought too much about it, because we were really prepared to just kick it with this tape and see where we would get. Tried to get a couple shows, and all of a sudden everything just fell into place magically for a little while.
Those 200 copies of the tape, you could probably find them on eBay for a pretty penny, maybe. Who knows?
I don't think I'm that popular. But...
Or on Amazon or something. But Was it this publishing deal, the guy that had a year to shop for your record deal? Is that how you ended up signing to Warner Music in '99?
Frank Davis was really the person who introduced me and the guys in Staggered Crossing to everybody that he could in the industry. We ended up meeting Ralph James, who became our agent, Warner Music Canada, who became our label. And then we had, lawyers because we had to deal with the deals and things like that. And Frank was our publisher. Frank's company merged with a couple of other indie music companies, and they became the Song Corporation. And the Song Corporation was around for a little while, and then they went under, and we kept forging ahead. I mean, we were let go from Warner after the first record. I don't think it was the best timing for us to come out with a record. The music industry was in a very topsy-turvy sort of state. As soon as we released our record, Napster was in full swing. But there were some great moments. We had some great tours, toured with the Headstones and Big Sugar, played with Nickelback, played with Joe Cocker before he passed, and Guess Who, and all sorts of people, mostly Canadians. But we did also play with Midnight Oil, which was a huge thrill. Apparently, we end up in a mention in one of their autobiographies, which is kind of cool. And what was it? Semisonic was another band we played with. The old 97s were a band we played with, and that's remained a friend. So, yeah, it was a crazy time. And we were young. Literally, I think the first tape came out when I was 16, 17. And then by the time the Warner record came out in 2000, we were, 19, 20, but a couple of members that filled out the band later, Bruce and Daryl, were a bit older. They're about 10 years older than some of the high school friends.
So that major label debut comes out in 2000, 2001. It had 3 hit singles. So it had Further Again, it had A Million Works of Arts, and it had Old Man. What thoughts and memories and emotions come to you when you think back to that album that kicked off everything? I mean, that's the beginning of this amazing journey that you're on. Is there anything that just stands out, feeling or memory or any of that? You mentioned a few tours and that kind of stuff.
All of it's pretty incredible. I look back at it now and just see that I was one of the first, people of color and, to go out and kick it that way, here in Canada, at least. And some people have actually come up to me and mentioned that, and I forget. And when I get told that just by doing it, opened up a few doors and a space for other people like myself, and I feel pretty good about that. Also a hard slog, a hard journey. I lost, we all lost Bruce along the way. That wasn't easy. And we all, had our own sort of issues and continue to fight those issues, I suppose. But yeah, going up really fast and coming down really fast is not an easy thing for anybody.
Yeah, the music industry has like the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, right?
It's pretty harsh, and I've experienced both.
So I have a quote here from someone who actually mentioned what you just mentioned about being a pioneer in Canada, man of color in the rock world, that you didn't see that often at that time. So here's somebody that has something to say about that. So this is from an incredible drummer. This is Sekou Lumumba. So he's the drummer for Bedouin Soundclash, Big Wreck, Thornley, Edwin and the Pressure, Cardinal Official, and Serena Ryder. So he's my next guest on the podcast. And this is what he has to say about one Julian Taylor. He says, "When I moved to Toronto many years ago, Julian was one of the only Black artists who completely embedded who was completely embedded in the Canadian rock landscape and was making waves at it to boot. As a Black kid who cut his teeth on playing along to distorted guitars and had a taste for stuff outside the usual rap, R&B, and jazz, it was rare at the time to see another brother with tastes outside those boxes. Add to that, he's a phenomenal frontman, songwriter, and singer. I've always thought he was criminally underrated, and as anyone who's been to a show of his can attest.
Wow. Thanks, Sekou.
There
Please
you
tell
go.
him I said hello. I love Sekou.
I will tell him. So we're talking about the major label album. So the first single, Further Again, that's where I became a big fan. That reached number 7 on the Canadian rock charts. Ended the year as the 6th most played song on radio in Canada. And I want to know, because you were young when all this was happening, what was it like to hear your song on the radio for the first time?
First time I was driving my mom's car, and I knew it was coming on because it was on Mix It or Nix It. And I was prepared. Warner had told us that it was coming on, and I just pulled over because it blared out of the speakers on Mix 99.9, and certainly would never do that now when they played. But yeah, I pulled over and just lapped it up. You know, it was pretty extraordinary to have my song on the radio. And every time I hear my song on the radio, it just generates that same feeling.
And Mix It or Nix It, is that like people vote in if it should keep getting played? Did it get mixed a little, or did it get nixed? What happened?
It made it up a little bit, and then it fizzled out. I think we lost a collective soul or something like that.
Oh, those nixes, they'll get you. But so it's one thing hearing your song on the radio for the first time, but then, I mean, that song was one of the most played songs in Canada that year. So what was it like at the peak of that song where it's like a legit hit that you're hearing pretty frequently?
To be honest, I don't know. I didn't really. For me, it was a highlight to play the Mike Bullard show with Sean Kurchan, and for him to say he was a fan, that was pretty wild. You know, for Midnight Oil to say they were fans was pretty wild, and things like that. But I didn't even really know it was the 6th most played song of the year. So
it's in retrospect, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it was neat to be on Much Music, and funny to have that recognition for a little while. And just looking back on it was a pleasure. It was really lovely to have that experience with such close friends.
Do you remember coming up with that catchy riff in Further Again, or hearing it for the first time if it's a different guitarist maybe in the band that came up with it?
No, it was my riff that I came up with. I was walking my dog, and it just kept on buzzing through my head. So I just stopped, hung out on the front lawn for a bit, and just finally came in and put it down on like a little Tascam tape thing, like recorder. And that's how the riff was born. I didn't really know how the rest of the song was going to go, but that first intro riff was certainly something that a lot of the time I write stuff and I have no idea how I did. Like I listen, if I go back and listen to things, sometimes I'm actually flabbergasted that that came out of me.
Sometimes does it feel like you get a song or a riff or a lyric or an idea that comes to you like it's a gift from source or infinite intelligence or God or however you want to call it, where it's just like you're the conduit that it comes through?
Oh, all the time. I mean, you have to tap into it though. You have to exercise that muscle and that heart and soul that goes into everything that you do. But a lot of the time it's like, I have no idea. Like I said, I have no idea how it's coming. It's just, I get excited about it. It's an amazing feeling. It's one of my favorite things to do because of that excitement, because of that rush. It's like a drug, writing music, you know? And when you finally get to that place where you're like, oh, wow, that's exactly what I wanted. It's really satisfying. And that's why I've kept at it.
You mentioned you were walking your dog when that riff came to you. Did Fluffy get a songwriting credit for being a part of that moment of its creation?
No, Oscar didn't get a credit, but there's a song called Next of Kin on that same record, which the song is about Oscar.
Okay, so he still got his. It's still, yeah. Oscar. Any tips for beginner guitarists? So if we have listeners that are just picking up a guitar, any just general guitar tips that would help them maybe?
I assume it's a lot different from when I started out, because what I used to do was just go to the music store and buy, you know, people's songbooks. I still have all the songbooks that I purchased from back then, and I can go either play them on the piano or play them with guitar. And that's how I taught myself how to play. I would get chord books and things like that. But I guess now you could just jump on YouTube and get instruction that way, which is pretty interesting. So my tip is, you know, I would certainly try to do it on YouTube. Like now I go, if I need to learn a song, I'll do it on YouTube, but I would certainly try to do it as much as you can yourself at first, because I think that if you do that, you do develop your own sort of stylistic, you know, sound. I think that my rhythm guitar playing is, you know, very different from anybody else's because I started from scratch. So
When I was young, it was guitar tabs that were the thing.
oh yeah.
I used to go get guitar tabs, and now you can find any song on YouTube where there's literally like a teacher that's just sitting there showing you, you know?
Yeah, it's a little different from when we were coming up. It was all tabs and chords and books. And I it's actually different for on so many levels. I'm like trying to get my daughter to pick up a novel and read it. It's like so much harder than having her read something on her iPad. I'm like, this is crazy. But
Yeah, the with technology, the attention span, it used to be, I don't know, 30 seconds was the average attention span of a person, and now I think it's like 4 seconds. Like 4 seconds is the longest people can actually pay attention. That's the average.
that's the average
Attention span. Yeah, it's dropped from, it was like 30 or 20 seconds, and it's 4 seconds. Like after 4 seconds, people can't stay focused.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's scary. Yeah.
I don't know if that's good.
Oh, it's definitely not good. No.
Yeah, it's definitely not good.
So
Wow.
yeah. So to wrap up with the song further again, I was wondering if that is the most fun Staggered Crossing song to play live back when you were playing with Staggered Crossing. I mean, with the fan recognition of that song, so they're probably singing along and cheering with the fast tempo, the driving drums, that awesome guitar riff with the power chords in the chorus. Was that a blast to play? Like when you look down at the set list and you see that song coming up, were you like, yes? Or am I overthinking this way too
Yeah,
much?
I think you know, the one that was the most fun to play was Old Man Sitting by the Fire. Yeah, that one was like as soon as the drum hit and the guitars flew out, that was the one that got the most energy out of me for sure. But Further Again was good. I don't usually play it. Actually, I don't play a lot of the Staggered Crossing material because I have to relearn it. But yeah, that one for sure was in there. But like before the second record came out, Old Man Sitting by the Fire was definitely the big one. It used to end every show pretty much.
Okay. And the second single, A Million Works of Art, that has amazing harmonies. Does hearing and singing harmonies come easy to you?
Sometimes depends on the song. Those harmonies are done by Daryl O'Day, and he's extremely talented and gifted when it comes to harmonies. He can hear them probably better than I can. A lot of the harmony on the Staggered, and I think Daryl and my voice really blend well together. He's got a bit of a reedy kind of voice, like a clarinet or an oboe, whereas mine's a little bit more, I don't know, maybe more like a horn. It's louder. So we had a good time coming up with harmonies there. And Jeremy's a great harmony guy as well. Jeremy played drums.
I guess to dive deeper into that question is, if let's say you were sitting down with another musician and they were singing like the main line in a song, do you just naturally hear harmonies? And if so, is it easy to just hit those harmonies, or does it take practice? Like I know some people where it's just they hear harmonies, they sing them perfectly, and then other people it's like they have to figure out what the harmony is. It takes a long time to find the right note. Just curious.
Yeah, no, I can, if I'm sitting down with somebody, I'll be able to find the harmony for sure. I may forget it, but I can find it. Yeah.
You might find it, but you might lose it along the way. I have a quote here sent in from someone that knew you back in the Staggered Crossing days. So this is from Grammy nominated engineer and producer Dan Broadbeck. So he was nominated for his work with the Cranberries.
Yeah, I remember. I remember
And he had a big hand in the success of the Salads as well. So Dan says, when we were both a lot younger, I worked with his band Staggered Crossing at my first studio, DB Studios in London. I closed the studio in 2000, so I think it would be about 1999. We only spent a day or two together, but it was a blast. His energy was awesome. Although it was only a short time, I loved it. I've been approached or messaged by many people saying they worked with me at DB in the 90s. And I certainly don't remember them all because in those days I worked 15 hours a day, 6-7 days a week, and often had two bands in the same day. But I will always remember that session with Julian fondly. So that's from Dan Broadbeck.
Thank you, Dan. Wow, you found some people from the depths. Yeah.
It's a way back playback on this episode.
No, I remember that session too. We did everything live off the floor, and there were all demos that we were doing for Warner, and for that record. So yeah, I do remember that. It's crunchy stuff.
So you had mentioned that after that major label album on Warner, you left Warner, you started your own record label. So it was Bent Penny Records. You released your next album last summer when we were famous in 2002. What were the benefits of starting your own record label?
No, there weren't any really.
Yeah.
The only thing that would have been a huge benefit was learning how the process worked. And getting to know that better. I called every radio station. I still call some people that I know at radio to see what's going on with the songs that I put out. But at that time I was hustling and had a lot of that energy and drive and to do that. Learned about the industry in such a different way. It was a very huge learning curve, having to do everything from production to writing to distribution. At that time, Maple Nationwide did our distribution. They would soon become Maple and then Fontana. But had a lot of great relationships that I made along the way it was the first, okay, so I guess the benefit would have been the learning curve, but also the people that I became friends with and how I learned from other people, because a lot of the people that were in the business side of things weren't actually musicians. They were more industry people. And I got to know those people as well. So I ended up, starting off and just being the artist and meeting a lot of artists. And I continue to just from that. But I've also, because I toe the line on both, meet everybody in every aspect. And I think that's great. I mean, it's a nice way to make friends and contacts and learn from your mistakes and things like that.
So someone at radio that you should contact, if you haven't contacted, to play your new music is Chelsea Miller from Live 88.5 in Ottawa. So this is what she has to say about Julian. So she was I grew up with her. She grew up in my small town of Russell, Ontario, 3,000 people. She lived down the street from me and played hockey with her brother. This is what I actually saw her last night. She was on stage introducing Alanis Morissette and Alessia Cara. And she's introducing Rage Against the Machine and Run the Jewels in a few days. So she's doing some big things. So Chelsea says this: Julian Taylor has been a friend of Live 88.5 for years now. He played our Christmas party a couple of years ago, and he's such a genuine, authentic, beautiful human in music and life. It was an honor to hang with him, even though he may not remember, because our Christmas parties are pretty epic. We used to be New Cap Radio. Now we're with Stingray. She says, ain't no party like a Stingray / New Cap party. He deserves every award he gets. Such a special and rad human. So that's from Chelsea Miller. Do you remember that party at all? Maybe you've
sure.
A lot of parties.
I do. I remember it. I think we have a picture, the whole band sitting by the fire. I remember that party. That was with JTB. Well, thank you, Chelsea. That's really, really kind. You're blowing my mind with all these quotes. I didn't know people felt this way.
Yeah, we gotta. There's a lot of bad news. there's so much negativity on the news and stories and social media that, you know, the podcast for me is supposed to be a source of positivity. You know, people can tune in and hear some great stuff and feel better about themselves and all that stuff. So anyways, I'm glad you feel good hearing these kind words from other people, and you know how appreciated you are and appreciated your music is. So we're talking about last summer when we were famous. So the singles were Felony, Business as Usual, and Everyone Says. So Business as Usual, I remember that when it came out as well. That was one of my favorite songs. The notes I have is it's such a cool song between the grungy guitars in the intro, the driving bass, the clean guitar picking. My comment is, if the video game Guitar Hero came around requesting a song, would Business as Usual be one that you would submit to Guitar Hero? Because I would like to play that song with my plastic guitar that I still have.
Now that you mentioned that, probably, yeah. It's a pretty epic piece of guitar music. The riff was started off with Dan, the bass player, playing that heavy riff, and then I adopted it on guitar, and we all sort of just fell in line. The arpeggio picking is me. The other sort of reggae guitar is our friend Dave, and then Jay Bennett, who was in Wilco, did this other sort of key. We call it the Guitar Army because he recorded this thing and then we flipped the tape and went backwards, so it sounded sort of like, you know, a synth, but it's all guitar heavy. And Last Summer When We Were Famous is certainly one of my favorite records. At the time, I didn't feel that way, and now I do.
What do you think's changed that makes you feel more fondly about it?
I just think that we had a vision. We stuck it through. Jay Bennett was a great friend and mentor and helped us stick it through. And it's just one of those. I think they're called records for a reason. It's a record in time. And now I look back at it and think, wow. I look back at all of them and think, wow. You know, but that one was cohesive in the way that we put it together, for sure.
So final question about Staggered Crossing, then we'll move on to the Julian Taylor Band. So in 2004, you released your final album as Staggered Crossing, Burgundy and Blue. The singles were Grow, Perfect Prize, and Don't Get Me Started. So Perfect Prize was a top 20 hit and the highest charting independent rock song in Canada of that year, which was 2005. What most people don't know is that you were actually the radio plugger that made it happen. So how proud are you of that accomplishment? Because that's not easy to do.
Well, I got lucky, I guess. I mean, we had a good song and we had some great supporters at Rock Radio at the time. And it was before the big conglomerates bought everybody out. So they were taking a bit more of a risk at the time. And J.C. Douglas was a guy that programmed Q104 in Halifax. And I remember him and Kath Thompson at the Bear really championed that song, and then others started to pick it up. I was shocked that it did so well. I just wish we had enough money to have put out a video, because we didn't. That's one thing we didn't do, and it might have helped us because Much Music was still airing videos at the time. But yeah, I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of a lot of things. I think that, you know, proud of the records, proud of the music, proud of the people I've worked with, proud of the accomplishments, even proud of the mistakes I've made along the way, because I've learned a lot. And that was the first record I really had a lot to do with the production side of things and how things would turn out later in my career. That record was taking whatever I had learned from Jay Bennett on the production side of things, and moving forward into my career would become very instrumental in the production of all the records after that.
So I was in a band called Distant Society. We had one song that got radio play called The Cycle. And the only reason we got radio play was because Kat Thompson in Ottawa. So I had met with her, played her the song, she liked it, and she played it for a few weeks on the radio. So me knowing what it feels like to have a song on the radio is because of the same person, Kat Thompson.
She's great.
Shout out to her.
Shout out to Kat for sure. She was great.
So let's dive into the Julian Taylor Band. So after Staggered Crossing broke up, there was a period where you felt kind of depressed and beat up with what happens in the music industry, again, the highs and the lows. Was there ever a time where you seriously considered quitting music forever?
Oh yeah, that was certainly after Staggered Crossing split up. That was tough. I put out a record called Blank Tape Levy in 2009, and that really didn't do anything. At the same time, that record was stolen. Like, I had to record it twice. I remember doing that because we came into the session, which was at Imprint Sound, and my friend Ed Zick, who was the producer, the co-producer at the time, definitely the engineer and mixing guy, had a studio next door, and his studio was broken into, and he lost a whole bunch of equipment, including the hard drive that had the initial album, Blank Tape Levy, on it. It's one of the reasons I called it Blank Tape Levy, because Blank Tape Levy is a levy that was on actual tapes that, it's like bootlegging. So it is stealing in a way. But so that's why I called the record that. And it's going to get a re-release because I'm going to put it out on DSPs sooner than later. But it was a tough one because we had to go back and re-record all the same songs. And I think I would love to hear what they sounded like before that, because I think they had a different kind of energy. You walk in and have to record the whole record again and then pay everybody again. It's like, oh my God. It's a little deflating. But after that, I did some acoustic recordings of some songs, and that was a record called Absence of the Sun. And then after that, I just went bartending and hanging out and doing that. And that was my life. Played a little bit, but never really in public.
So with the release of those two low-key albums, were you still trying to find your sound of what you would sound like, not as Staggered Crossing, but as a solo musician?
No, because yes and no, because some of the songs were, slated for a Staggered Crossing record. It's almost as if Blank Tape Levy could have been another Staggered Crossing record, but it was just not as heavy. And I always think that I've found my voice from the very beginning. I'm a folk rock singer. Like, nothing's changed. I just know how to navigate some of the production of and put together the songs differently. Nothing's really changed. I mean, if you go back to the second EP, the Staggered Crossing EP, there's a song called Time's Made Up My Mind, which is a country folk rock song. The bulk of the first Staggered Crossing record is quite Americana-esque. Even in Burgundy and Blue, there's rock and Americana there. I would say that the heaviest record I've done would have been Last Summer When We Were Famous, because I was probably the angriest then.
Yeah, I hear you. Is it true that using your name for Julian Taylor Band, that wasn't the plan from the start? That
it really wasn't. No, because I was making money at that time as a jobber. We all were. Julian Taylor Band was a cover band. What we did was we would tour around Southern Ontario and play 3 sets a night. I remember playing at Jozo's in Blue Mountain, where you would have to show up on the Friday. You play 3 sets on the Friday, then you play 7 sets on the Saturday and the Sunday. Basically, you're playing almost 21 sets in 3 days, and we were playing cover songs. Dave Engel, who ended up playing keys in the band, he's an old high school friend who was in other rival high school bands back in the day. He came up with the backbone for a song called Never Gonna Give You Up, and called me in, and we worked on that together, and it would become the first single where Live 88 just gravitated to it. We didn't have a name other than Julian Taylor Band, so we were trying to get wedding gigs. My dad's a wedding photographer and things like that, and that song did okay,
So once that song's on radio, then you're the Julian Taylor Band, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was easier to get the grant applications in. It was, and also, I mean, we also did it because, I mean, I've been known in the industry a little bit more as well. So, you know.
So that song was off the 2014 album Tech Noir. Then you guys have Desert Star in 2016 and Avalanche in 2019. So I went back, I listened to the entire discography, all of Staggered Crossing, all of Julian Taylor Band, all of Julian Taylor, and a few standout tracks from those two albums to me were Just a Little Bit, Set Me Free, Coke Bottle Candy, Bobby Champagne, Back Again, and Sweeter. So those were the standout songs for me on those two albums. And let's dive into your album The Ridge now. So now we're into the Julian Taylor solo area of the interview, and The Ridge is such an incredible album that I really wanted to spend a lot of time on it. So is that okay with you? We move forward with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, awesome. So this comes out in 2020. It receives a ton of critical acclaim. It gets nominations for all these different awards, including the Juno Awards, gets 2 nominations. How much do those 2 nominations mean to you with them coming like 2 decades into your music career? Like it probably, I mean, just getting a Juno nomination means a lot, but I feel like the total output you've had up to that point, that it would be something special to finally get that recognition. Or maybe you don't care at all. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I cared. I mean, I had always wanted to be nominated in that, because I've seen so many people that I've worked with and that are friends of mine get nominated, and I'd never had that opportunity. And I'd be lying if I said I was disappointed that Tech Noir didn't get nominated. I was disappointed that Desert Star didn't. I mean, I put a lot of effort into those records. Same with Avalanche, which I think is a great sounding record. And I felt bad because I know that the guys in Staggered Crossing and I know the guys in the Julian Taylor Band also really wanted those things too. And it still eludes them, I guess, you know. And they've worked hard as well. So it was a little bit like, you know, I remember Alan Reed getting on the broadcast and mentioning that, you know, that I had finally received 2 Juno nominations after 20 years of doing this. And it was really important for me and my family. My daughter got to see her dad, you know, being recognized like that, which is also really important. And for those reasons, absolutely. Really nice to be recognized by the Polaris jury as well. And it's scary too, you know, you just, once those things come to you, I'm a bit of a person who I just really love working away at what I'm working away on and hope that it is received well, because I think that I have something to say to people. And when I do hear my songs on the radio, I'm proud that I'm saying something. Some people don't. And I recognized that from the very beginning, that I always said that everybody's worst song seems to be the one that gets the most play. You know, it's like, I don't get it. But we have always gone into the studio, whoever I've gone in the studio to work with, to try to put forth some sort of a message. And I think that that's been the most important thing to me. So to be recognized for that is really great. I hope that people go back and recognize the rest of the catalog too, because I think it's really good.
You mentioned your daughter seeing you at the Junos. Does she think her dad's a rock star, or are you just some schmuck that pays the bills at home?
Oh, she's gotten a bit older now, and now she's more like, I'm a bit of a schmuck, but she still thinks I'm a rock star dad. Yeah,
I love it.
You know, love it. As they get into their preteens, hanging out with us is not necessarily
it's not the priority.
Yeah, not anymore. Hey, do you want to hear Daddy's new song? Not really. Okay.
Yeah, well, you'll hear it on the radio someday. How special is it that forever, 2-time Juno nominee, that title will be attached to your name? How amazing is that?
It's great. I would love to put Grammy nominee up there as well one day. You know, try to manifest that. It would be great. But it's not the end all and be all. I think the end all and be all is to get the message out and and B, to be able to pay my bills.
So normally at the end of the interview, I ask, are there any dreams you still have in your heart that haven't been fulfilled? I'll ask that now. You just mentioned being nominated for a Grammy would be a big one. Is there anything else that's kind of on your bucket list that you're working towards?
Yeah, I personally, I would really like to just be able to tour um, all over the world and have, you know, even if it was like a few hundred people came to my shows, that would be great. I mean, a few thousand would be even better. But at the same time, I don't really need that. I don't crave a huge audience, but 300 people at a show, and I would really like to play more theaters and not have to be stuck in clubs until 2 in the morning. Maybe that's aging me, but at the same time, I do. I have a daughter and I have a life, and I want to live it. And I've done that part already. I'd like to see personally for it to become a little easier for me to make any sort of headway and traction, because it hasn't been easy. It's always an uphill battle, and I guess the Ridge would be the first that I've seen it not be as much of an uphill battle, but I'm still behind the scenes doing all the label work and doing all that stuff and managing the team and stuff like that. So it is a lot of work, but it always feels like an uphill battle. And I'd like to see that, go away a little bit more, but maybe it doesn't ever go away for anybody. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you recently got a new booking agent in the U.S., so maybe that helps to make that vision of being able to tour all around the world. Maybe that's a good step in the right direction.
I'm hoping, yeah, for sure, because I do love playing, and Canada's lovely, but it's hard to play Canada. Not a lot of groups can command a coast-to-coast tour. Obviously, the Arkells can, Blue Rodeo can. The Hippie were able to do that before. I'm not sure if there's any others that really, Alan Doyle, but it's hard.
There's a big distance between some of the cities, right? There's 8 hours between some cities, where in the US, it's like every 30 minutes you have like another major city. So it's a tough drive, and especially in the winter, right? The treacherous roads.
Yeah, Canada's not easy. I mean, I don't foresee it being easy anywhere, but I think I'm going to be heading out of my first UK and European tour in the new year, and really looking forward to that and seeing what that's like. I mean, I'm starting from scratch again. I feel like I'm still starting from scratch in Canada. I mean, I'm just releasing a new record is starting from scratch. Just because the Ridge had the success that it did doesn't mean anything. It means that it made a lot of people happy, which means everything to me. But the success part and all that really doesn't mean anything, because it's every time you put out a new record, you're starting from scratch.
Yeah, it definitely feels like the Ridge was a turning point. Like it feels like that's the start of whatever this next chapter is. And that's what it feels like from the outside. I don't know if it feels like that from the inside.
Yeah, no, not really. It's a bit daunting to me to have a record that's successful 20 years later, and I also have 10 before it, and now keep on moving forward with the next one. I hope people like the next record. I hope that it resonates with them, and that you always wanted to surpass the thing you did before, but that's unforeseeable. It's basically we have our effort, and that's all we can do. The rest of it's in the universe's hands, and that's daunting. It's scary.
Yeah, I hear you. You got to put yourself out there every time, and it's your lyrics and your voice, and you have to be vulnerable, right, as a musician. And it's you can take it personal if an album doesn't do as well commercially as you want, or maybe the critical acclaim isn't there on an album, and it can be super personal, even though the people don't know you personally.
So yeah, we'll see what happens, but all of my stuff's very personal. It always has been.
Well, that's what the fans like about you, right? That's something that stands out, is you get kind of it's like reading someone's journal, where there's that authenticity and there's that transparency in the writing.
Right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. So the Ridge recorded in Toronto at the Woodshed. Can you give our listeners a little bit of insight into the recording of that album? Any stories or any talk of the musicians or anything that stands out to you that's worth sharing?
Yeah, I mean, it was the first time that I'd actually recorded anything with my cousins Gene and Barry, and that was beautiful because we have such a great vibe. They're an amazing rhythm section, and I think we pulled together a really earthy sounding sort of recording, which is great. It was also the first time that I'd worked with Derek Downham, and Derek and I went all the way back to his 1610 days. We've known each other forever, and that was the first time we got to work together, and that was lovely. I love recording at the Woodshed because it's not really fancy. It's, you know, you get what you get, and most people have to play in a room together because it's just one room. I also really enjoy, you know, singing the vocals while I like got the acoustic guitar in my hand. So it's really hard. The last couple of records, it's really hard to get any instrumental versions of these records because there's so much bleed. My voice, my guitar, some other instruments will bleed in there, but definitely it's the voice that, you know, if it was just the instruments bleeding, you would have your instrumental, is what I'm saying.
And Derek plays like a scary amount of instruments. Did he play a ton of instruments on the album as well?
Yeah, he did. More so on the next record than the Ridge. I believe he played just guitar and piano on the Ridge album. But on the next album, he does play ukulele, banjo, mandolin, guitar, piano, and organ.
Isn't he like a great drummer as well? Or am I making
He's a killer
up?
drummer, yeah.
Yeah, what I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, he's an amazing. He's a genius for sure. He's an amazing musician and artist. Love Derek, and he's a beautiful person too.
Yeah, that's funny. I know him as a drummer, and you just named like 7 instruments that aren't drums that he played on your album, and no drums. So that's how talented he is.
He's incredible. Yeah.
There. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say the album. So there's 8 songs, and there's like a cohesive sound through the whole album. Like it's, you know, there's 8 different songs. They all have their own thing going on. It doesn't sound like the same song 8 times, but just sonically, there's this glue, this cohesiveness to the album. And I'm curious how you think you were able to get that sound. Was it that you had a vision for what it would sound like from the start and that allowed you to keep it cohesive, or did it just happen?
A little bit of both. I definitely had a vision of how I wanted it to sound. Performing it with the core band live is really a trick to that.
Sorry, so the album was mostly live off the floor?
Yes and no. Most the core is, so like the piano, the drums, the bass, the acoustic guitar, and my voice. All of that was recorded at the same time. But then anything else that was overdubbed. So pedal steel was overdubbed, fiddle was overdubbed, backing vocals were overdubbed. That kind of stuff was overdubbed, but the core of it was recorded right there. Same with the other record. The new record is it's all like same approach.
Do you have a favorite part of the recording process? Some people love, you know, going in and the writing of it. Some people it's a collaboration with other artists. Some people it's their vocals. Is there something that stands out that you know, some parts are tedious and then some parts maybe you look forward to more than others?
I love writing the songs. I do. I think that's my favorite part about it, because writing the songs is such a tricky thing for me. I know it doesn't come easy to me. People may think that it does, but it doesn't. It's a very laborious process, and when I'm finally finished and I'm happy with what I've created as a song, it's a definite time for celebration in my heart and my mind, because it's very difficult for me. I spend a lot of effort and time with it, and I slave over it. Like, I'm one of those writers that, you know, like I'll go back and change words up until the very last minute because something didn't make sense. It could be an it or it is. And it could be something that simple. I'm like, it's not communicating what I want it to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, just flipping them back and forth is something that I always do. And Um, I think that the more that I've told a bit about how I'm really feeling and things that have happened to me, um, seems to relate to people. Like, I mean, the new song "Seed" seems to really get people. It's not about me, but it is about me, and um, it's it's basically saying, you know, you can't get rid of me. I'm, I'm I have too much to give that you can't get rid of me or people like me or anybody for that matter. There's a if the music can if don't die with the music still inside
Hmm.
you know.
Do you said writing doesn't always come easy to you? Do you suffer from writer's block and ever? And if
Oh
so,
yeah.
do you have any tips for our young songwriters listening to this on maybe how to get over writer's block?
Write somebody else a song. You know, that's what I've tried. If like writer's block is a tough one for me because I when it comes to songs, I really want those songs to be really deeply personal. So sometimes it makes it that much easier to get something off and just write something ridiculous, like just write down a whole bunch of gibberish and put some chords together and sing that for a while, and you'll find that you get yourself into a bit more fun. You know, it's because my songs are so deeply personal. The songs that I write that are ridiculous don't get put on my records. There's a lot of
I was gonna say we were talking about that might end up being your biggest hit is just writing something ridiculous, right?
you never know, right? Maybe I got it. Maybe it'll be a children's song. That's going to be my biggest hit with to go along with the book.
Well, parents are willing to spend a lot of money on their kids for ridiculous things, so why not music, right?
Yeah.
So we have our first fan question sent in here. So this is from Selge Menard. He wants to know what are the biggest differences between being a frontman for a band and being a solo artist? Any differences?
The difference is probably when I have been the front man for a band, you have a little bit more of a dynamic where you are not the boss completely. You know, you have, say, in Staggered Crossing, it was five other people, and we all had to sign off on things. Being a solo artist, I don't have anybody. I sign off on everything. So
You're the big man on campus
yeah,
for
I'm
the
the big
solo.
cheese. Yeah. So that's nice, but it also comes with a bit of a stress when you're making all the choices and decision makings and stuff like that. But I love being both. I would also love to try my hand at just being, you know, side, you know, musician at some point. I've done it. I did it for an Australian singer named Marta for a couple gigs. She was a country singer, and that was fun. It was nice to not have any of the pressure. So
You show up, you play, you get paid. You don't have the pressure of everything else around
everything
it.
else, yeah, it doesn't.
Oh, it sounds lovely, but it wouldn't be as fulfilling, right? With everything you're doing that's so personal, you know?
I suppose. I mean, I'm willing to try anything, and it's a beautiful thing to be a person in my position where I get to go out on my own and I get to put some players together that want to perform my music. I love that. I can't believe people want to play with me, and that's a gift.
So let's dive into the 8 songs on the album The Ridge, and then we'll get to the new single and the upcoming album. So the
Mm-hmm.
first song on The Ridge is The Ridge, and
Mm-hmm.
it has great female harmonies, and there's great female harmonies through the whole album. Can you give a shout out to those singers? I believe it's 2 female singers, not just
It
one.
is. It's Sheila and Amanda, and they make up the group Dala. They've also been Juno nominated.
Oh yeah, they're popular.
Yeah, Dala is the backing vocals on both on the Ridge and Beyond the Reservoir, and I love them dearly. They bring so much, and you know it was really important for me also in putting together that record and putting together this record to have a varied cast of characters, you know, and it's been that way for forever. Um, early like the Julian Taylor band stuff, you have like women and men and colored people, and just everybody playing everything. And I just wanted to make it just that much better for the listener to feel that they can relate to every aspect of it. So they can relate to the male voice, they can relate to the female voices. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds, man, the harmony sounds so good. Like when the harmonies kick in and the choruses, it's like a warm hug, you know? It's
Yeah,
nice.
they are like that.
Yeah. So the next song is called Human Race. There's a great slide guitar and strings. How do you decide which non-traditional instruments to add to a song? So let's say outside of your guitar, bass, and drums, how do you decide how much you're going to add and flesh out with other instruments?
I pretty much hear it in my head, and by listening, I mean, like I listen to this stuff all the time. I don't listen to my music the same way I guess others do. I listen to it for all that's wrong with it. And
Spoken like a true perfectionist.
you know, so what can make it better? I'm always sort of looking for that, and what can make it more relatable and connect with people and communicate with people. That's important too. And I've always loved the sound of pedal steel. Certainly, like I mentioned, I'm a Neil Young fan, and it's all over Harvest. And it's just, it really brings a lot to that record. You know, I think that actually, now that I think about it, Harvest would be the Ridge, and Beyond the Reservoir is probably my After the Gold Rush. Those two will sit side by side.
Well,
Sure.
if there's two albums to use as inspiration, those are some pretty great ones.
Those are good records. Both of those records are great.
Absolutely.
I guess Harvest would be more popular than After the Gold Rush, but it's up there.
The critical acclaim is up there for both, though, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So the next song is called It's Not Enough. That's one of my favorites on the album. Another great chorus with the female harmonies. There's these high notes going on. I don't know what instrument it is. There's like really high notes. It's like when you're a kid, you get sticks and you're playing kind of like a piano, but you're playing percussion.
It's a glockenspiel.
That's what's going on in there.
Mm-hmm.
Glockenspiel.
Just really, really slight high note.
It's a little ear candy as like an audio engineer and a producer. It's the little extra things that you're hearing in multiple listens, you know?
Well, Sam Hashemi is the engineer, co-producer, and mixing engineer for a lot of my records, for The Ridge, for Beyond the Reservoir, for Part of Desert Star, for Tech Noir. And I just think he's got a real knack for it. He's really gifted.
And does he play? He plays an instrument as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, he plays a bunch. He plays, sometimes he'll play guitar. He's played guitar on a lot of my records. He's played piano and percussion. He's just really gifted, and he and I work really closely together and work really hard at creating these projects. You know, we both have really good ears.
How did you connect with him? Is it starting with The Ridge that you worked with him, or do you go further back?
Tech Noir. Sam and I started at
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it doesn't really matter the type of music either.
That's a good producer, right?
He's great. One of the best. He's certainly underrated in my books.
So the next song is called Over the Moon. So my notes are beautiful piano playing, slide guitar, female harmonies, violin parts. Do you have an app on your phone or a hard drive that just has all these ideas, like guitar riffs and vocal lines and lyrics that you can go to when you're recording a new album, like your new one, that you can just kind of pick all these greatest hits ideas all up in here?
Yeah, it's a lot of stress.
I was gonna say there's a lot. I mean, keeping all that up there, like how do you sleep at night with?
I don't sleep well.
There you go.
Some nights I sleep better than others, but yeah, no, it's all in my head and it's always churning. Sam's also really good at that too. He and I, talk about what we think needs to happen here and there, and we spend a lot of time with it. So nice to have somebody like that to bounce ideas off of, and vice versa. Like if he's got an idea and it doesn't work, I always say in the studio, it's a funny thing to say, but when it sucks. It's really hard to know when something's good, but you do know immediately when the idea sucks.
Some people do, because there's some pretty horrible stuff that you hear on the radio, but
well, I guess, but You know when it's bad in the studio. Finding out if it's good or not, that's the tricky thing.
Yeah, there's someone that knows something about good sounding audio and a good sounding recording is Joa Carvalho, who's
Oh, yeah?
one of the greatest mastering engineers on the planet. This guy's mastered over 2,000 albums, including Rush, The Tragically Hip, Smashing Pumpkins, Blue Rodeo, and Alexis on Fire. So this is what Joa has to say. He says, I'd say Julian is always there with a big, warm, welcoming smile, no matter where or when. Julian's an absolute natural on stage, a total pro in that classic sense of writing, recording, and performing his songs. So that's from Joa Carvalho.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, we go way, way back.
Did he ever master any of your stuff, or you just
Yeah.
know him from the industry?
Oh, he's mastered some stuff for us. Yeah. I can't remember what. Maybe, no, he didn't do Burgundy and Blue. He might have done Last Summer When We Were Famous. I think he might have done that.
We'll have to figure that out. I'll have to ask him where the connection.
He has, though. I know he has, certainly. He did a single Bro. I know he did that. And he just did the most recent remastering of the Staggered Crossing record, the deluxe edition. He did that. Yeah, we go back way, way back, 20 years actually.
That's awesome. It's nice to have friends in the industry. We're now on Ballad of a Young Troubadour, which is the most played song of yours on Spotify. This has over 5 million streams. Why do you think this is connected with so many people? So again, it's one of my favorite songs on the album. I get it. I get why people love it. Why do you think it's connected with so many people?
I guess it's the sing-along chorus. You know, it starts off with the sing-along chorus and it gets people right away. I'm surprised it has so many plays. It's a really long song.
It's over 5 minutes, right?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the songs are long. The Ridge is long. Yeah, Human Race is long.
Are you not trying to write a 3-minute pop hit single here?
Well, wait till you hear the new record. Nothing's under 4 minutes. Yeah, I don't know. It's just the allegory. The song sort of follows me as a young aspiring musician as well. I think that the story catches people as well. But why it's had 5 million spins, I have no idea. Compared to, like, I thought the Ridge was going to be the one that had the most when I first released it. I was wrong, you know.
Yeah, even though it's a new song and it sonically it sounds new, like the quality sounds great. It has that old school singer-songwriter vibe, like someone that's taking you on a journey. Like it sounds like an adventure as you listen to it. That's what I hear.
That's what you hear. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. But I think that most of the songs take you through like makes what somebody said was like it's like a book or like a film scene. Like when you listen to the songs like that I've been writing, they feel like you're being taken on like you're in a movie, which is good, I guess.
The next song is Be With You. So your voice sounds very intimate in this song. It sounds like you're right up close to the mic, great vocal delivery, voice sounds awesome. Do you have a specific mic that you like to use with your type of voice?
Oh yeah, it's the same one all the time. This SM, same mic that old Michael Jackson used to use.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So what is it? A Shure?
It's a Shure SM, not 58. What's it called?
Not a 57, not a 58. What is that one? Anyways, a powerful shout out to Shure.
I have it somewhere. Hold on. It's always the same mic. Let's see.
You have the box or something somewhere?
It's the 7B.
7B. Okay. Let me write that down to check that out. Sure, 7B.
I use that for my radio show too. I just think it's the best vocal mic. And the fact that Michael Jackson used it to record Thriller also didn't hurt.
Yeah, if he's able to sell like 60 million copies of that album with that mic, it's probably good enough for us. What do you think?
Yeah, he did okay with that record.
So that's your go-to mic, but before that became your go-to mic, did you test out different mics and then
No,
eventually ended up on that one, or?
no, I would always just trust the engineer. And Som was the engineer that introduced me to this record, to this mic during the recording of Techno One. And ever since that, I've used it.
And do your song, like we're talking about the songwriting on the album, do your songs come together normally in a certain order? Like sometimes someone hears a melody and then puts that to guitar or piano and then fills in lyrics where that has to go. Sometimes people write the story, like the entire lyrics, and then put that to music. Is there a specific way that your stuff normally comes together, or it could start in any direction first?
It could start in any direction. Both the Ridge, actually all my records, but the Ridge especially, I guess some of those songs are just poems or stories written to music. Like the Ridge itself, first lyrics came first, and same with Ballad, lyrics came first, and then the others are sort of pieced together in that way. But same with the new record too. It's like I have a couple songs where lyrics came first, and then I added music to it. It's nice to add music when lyrics come first. I find that when I do that, the lyrics help change the melody. Like when I start and I just have a melody and then I'm trying to add lyrics to it, the melody dominates what words I'm using. But if I do it the opposite way, the words dominate what the melody does. So they can change the melody because of what they are. And I'll have to, but that's how it works for me.
The final two songs on the album, Love Enough and Ola Let's Dance. So Love Enough, that's probably the most stylistically different song on the album. There's awesome guitar playing. What kind of style of music would you call that? Like that groove? Is it like a Latin groove? Or where did that come from?
It's a Western groove. It's like but like a Southwestern groove. Similar to what bands like the Mavericks would have been, playing, or Los Lobos, perhaps. So it's like maybe a Latin Western sort of groove for sure. Derek plays slide guitar on that, does a brilliant job playing guitar on that record. And it's just congas and an upright bass and a guitar. It's really stripped down. Love that one. And that's a vocal take in one take as well.
Yeah, and your vocals, there's a style of reverb on your voice, so more reverb than on the other songs, I believe, and it gives kind of like a old school Roy Orbison, Elvis vibe. Maybe that's just me. I don't know if the comparisons make sense, but okay, I'm not completely crazy, just a little crazy. When you play that, so the pandemic, you put out the album, and there's 2 years where you're not playing live. You've played live shows since then over the last few months. Do people start to dance when that song comes on? It feels like that's the chance for the dancers in the crowd.
Not yet. Most people have been sitting for the shows.
How dare they? They need to get their stamina back after 2 years of sitting.
Same with me. But we did one show at the Horseshoe, and that was a Julian Taylor band show, and that was pretty cool. People were not dancing because they had to sit. Maybe they're just getting used to it. Hopefully they get up. This weekend we're playing a couple shows, and hopefully they get up and boogie. It'd be nice to
see that fun energy in the crowd would be awesome. So the last song is Ola Let's Dance. So it's spoken word with singing at the end. Where did the idea of having spoken word come up for the record? And have you ever thought of putting out a full spoken word album?
I've never thought about doing the full spoken word album because I think that William Shatner's cornered the market on that. But it was my idea to do this. That's a poem that was actually written by my grandfather that I was trying to incorporate into the song, and I was trying to write a melody for it. And at the last minute, I just said, you know what? Why don't I just try to speak it? And it worked out really well. So
Yeah, you have obviously you have a great singing voice, but you also have a great speaking voice. I was going to ask if you've ever considered, voice acting or a podcast or a radio show, and then I find out doing research that you do have a radio show. So can you um, give our listeners maybe a little info about that radio show if they want to tune in?
Yeah, sure. I started working at Element FM in Toronto about 3, 4 years ago as the afternoon drive person. I was the afternoon drive host. And from there, I took my experience and developed a show for musicians like myself and music lovers called Julian Taylor's Jukebox. And I play about 75% BIPOC music like myself, and really like being able to support those artists. And the rest of it's a smorgasbord of what you might hear in my house. Like you may hear that Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee record, or the Tribe Called Quest records, or things like that, or Queen, or Zeppelin, or I don't know, anybody really. I think I even played Girl from Ipanema on the radio show the other day. So that's pretty exciting to be able to jump around like that. The and the radio thing is something that I've always sort of thought about and always kind of did, because when I was a kid, I don't know, you must have done this too, but you'd wait till your favorite song came on the radio and then try to grab it on tape and come up with mixtapes that way.
I used to do that with videos, and for Much Music, I'd try to record them on VHS as well. The original YouTube.
Yeah. So it was always something that and I remember doing it at camp and pretending to be Wolfman Jack and things like that. It was fun. So it's like just a natural sort of evolution that happened, which is a beautiful thing.
So in 2021, you released 100 Proof, so a new song. Will that be on the new album, or is that a standalone single from 2021?
I haven't decided.
Ooh, okay.
I haven't decided. It's certainly not on the same master for the vinyl. It could be on the digital release, but yeah.
Maybe a bonus song or something.
Maybe a bonus song. That song's written by a friend of mine. I didn't write that one, and I just felt like it was such a great song that I wanted to cover it. The first time I ever heard it, I was like, wow, Tyler, it's a beautiful song, Tyler Ellis. And it sort of mirrors my life in a way. I had a daughter in my mid-30s, and just sort of trying to think of life that way is such a beautiful thing. So
I have a comment here. This is someone that I know from, both of us were finalists on Canadian Idol. So this is from Oliver Piggott. So Oliver Piggott, he says, I've known Julian a long time and have long been an admirer of his talent and dedication. He's a warm guy with a big heart. So that's Oliver Piggott.
Thanks, Oliver. I love Oliver. I see him on the Dania walking around.
That guy's so talented as a singer and a guitarist. I think he's in Nashville now, so he's in the US.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah, I think maybe during the pandemic, I'm not sure, but when I touched base with him, he had things going on in the US. So
that's great. I hope he gets it going. He's really, really a sweet guy.
There you go, Oliver Piggott. So we've gone all the way from your earliest musical memories through Staggered Crossing, through the Julian Taylor Band, onto your newest album, and we're finally at Beyond the Reservoir, which is your new album. It's looking to be released in October. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. October, like mid-October. Yeah.
And the first single is Seeds, and that came out recently. It looks like reception's been great. It looks like it's already been picked up on the radio in Australia. It's where else? The Indigenous Music Countdown. It's already on the charts. How has the reception been for you so far for that single?
Really great. Friends like Davenant Doyle heard it, and she just loved it, which is so nice to hear that from fellow artists. Sebastian Gaskin sent me another message on my Instagram saying just how much he loved the song. The support of CBC and the IMC and BBC, as well as ABC in Australia, has been so great. I'm just really fortunate. I'd love to see more people hear the song, because I think that the message is really important. And I, was honored enough to be accompanied by Robert Priest, who's another friend of mine who's a writer, and we wrote that together. He sent me a poem, and I just kept on looking at that poem thinking, this might work for this song. and then pieced all the other words together from that. And very proud of it. And it's very now. And I think the reason it's very now will always make it stand out. And it's nerve-wracking. Like I said, I hope that people respond to this record in a way that, you know, they're not going to respond to it the same way that they did to the bridge. I just hope that it connects with people.
Well, that song is very positive. It's very inspiring. Is that important to you, that you have kind of this hopeful message behind your music?
I think that I've always had both of these things. I think that there's always been a bit of hope in my music because of the type of person that I am. And I also always think there's a bit of sadness in my music because of the type of person that I am. I think it's existed the whole way through my career. Maybe the Julian Taylor Band stuff, maybe some of that's a bit more fun because it was meant to be that way. But any of the songs that really resonate have that.
Maybe that's what draws people to you and your music, is that great duality of you know, light and dark, and you know, happy and sad and all those things. People can relate to the whole spectrum of human emotion, I suppose.
Perhaps. I don't know. I mean, I know that all the effort that I put into it is all that I can put into it, and I do. And from there, I have to let it go.
You said you hope that people respond well to the new album. You hope that they like it. Are you feeling pressure to follow up The Ridge, which is, again, a hard album to follow up based on the acclaim and the popularity?
Oh, sure. I've definitely felt it. It's a constant stress. You know, every day I wonder, should I make this move? Should I put this one out? What should I do? And I guess I should stop second guessing myself and just go for it. But I also don't want to like inundate people as well as, you know, be everywhere all the time. And it seems like I am a little bit, and I don't want to oversaturate myself as well. But at this time, and some people say right now the iron's hot, so strike. I don't know. It's a funny kind of conundrum to be in.
Yeah. You released a live music video for a new song called Murder 13. So that's a deeply personal song. Are you able to share what the inspiration for it is with our listeners?
Sure. I mean, I don't think inspiration is actually the word to use, because it was not an inspiring event that happened in my life. Unfortunately, in 2005, one of my closest friends was brutally murdered here in Toronto. And, yeah, I mean, I don't really know whether to say that he was stabbed 17 times in an alleyway. I was one of the last numbers on his phone, so I know that the police kept calling me, and I had to go into the station, and that was a tough day. And I don't know if you've ever been in a room like that, and actually Mark Saunders became the chief of police, was the head investigator of that case. And they came in, good cop, bad cop, and the first question I was asked was, did you kill this person? That was the first question that I was asked. And I started bawling. I said, no. The second question, guess what it was? Well, if you didn't, do you know who did?
It's a pretty cold set of questions for
pretty surreal, man. So yeah, I wouldn't call it inspiration. I mean, the record Beyond the Reservoir is a deeply personal record. It hits a little heavier than The Bridge does on a lot of topics, and that's one of them.
I had my best friend pass away in a car accident a few years ago, so I not quite the same, but I feel the pain of loss with someone you care about for sure. So I feel you on that. And is that so? Another new song is that'll be on the new record as well?
Yep, Murder 13's on the record. Seeds is on the record. 100 Proof, like I said, might make a showing. Then the others are Moonlight is the first song on the record, and that's got pedal steel on it. It's got the girls in Dallas singing on it. It's got Miranda Mulholland playing fiddle, and it's a long song. I think that one's 7 minutes long. I think the first song is 7 minutes long to get things started. And most of the songs are over 4 minutes, but I had a lot to say.
Yeah. Do you know if it's 8 songs or 10 songs or 12
At
songs?
the moment, it's 9. If 100 proof gets put on it, it would be 10. The only reason I wouldn't put 100 proof on it is because it could go on the digital, but it might not fit on the vinyl.
On the, oh, what's the total? So a CD you can put up to 80 minutes. On vinyl, how many minutes is
I,
it?
I think the fidelity starts to really crackle at 40.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You're limited by the medium that you're printing on, I suppose.
So it could go on the digital copy, but like I said, it can't. I don't think it can fit on the vinyl.
So as we near the end of the interview, I have maybe a final quote. I think this is it. And this is from one of the co-writers of Murder 13. So this is from Lonnie Knapp, who,
Oh, no way.
for our listeners, he was a part of the Mudmen and Jay Englishman, and co-writer here with Julian Taylor on his new song, Murder 13. So this is another long one. And it ties together you talking about Freeman Dre earlier in the interview as well. So this is from Lonnie Knapp. He says, Julian and I cut our teeth together in the early 2000s when he was a member of Staggered Crossing and I was playing guitar with the Mudmen and Jay Englishman. We shared the stage and traversed the country. His commitment to his craft is envious, and I've loved watching him evolve as an artist and performer. It's amazing that 20 years after his first record deal, he's producing the best music of his career. These days, I most often play with Freeman Dre. In a wild coincidence, Dre, who is my best friend and in my opinion one of the best songwriters in the country, is also one of JT's oldest pals and was a member of the earliest version of Staggered Crossing. Last summer, the three of us had an opportunity to hang out, reminisce, drink whiskey, and collaborate on a tune. The track is a heartrending telling of a tragic part of Dre and JT's childhood. But the weekend we spent writing it will always be a fond memory of the three old school friends sharing time and making music together like we've always done. I'm proud of JT. He's a great musician and an even better dude. So that's from Lonnie Knapp.
Thanks, Lonnie. Love you too.
He came up in a few of my interviews. So I interviewed the Mudmen, so he came up obviously as a member, and then he came up in the interview with Darren of the Salads.
Oh, sure.
So they have a project together as well. Let's see a few more things. So you now, after all these years, you now own the rights to all your music. If that is true, why is that important? Why should musicians from the start, if possible, try to own the rights to their music?
I don't necessarily think that it's important from the start. It just is what happened to me. I wanted to own my own legacy, really, and control that. Because, I can be a bit of a control freak when it comes to life and music. But knowing where the money trail is and knowing that I have the rights to do with my music what I want to do with it is quite important to me. You see musicians and people up in arms when morons like Donald Trump used their songs, and I stand for something. I believe I always have and that I always will. And I'd like for what I stand for to be, protected. I want to feel protected. And the person that I've found that has protected me the most throughout my life has been me. I've also done the most damage to myself too. But
yeah, you've now had a 25 plus year career in the music industry, which is forever. Most musicians don't last that long. How do you keep this fun after all these years? And what do you think accounts for that longevity? How are you still here making great music after 25 years?
I don't know how I'm still alive, to be honest. Yeah. It's the writing of the music. It's like don't die with the music inside you sort of vibe, where it's like, as long as I've got something to say, I'm going to say it. Music seems to be the medium that I'm able to communicate the best in, and so I try to do that. I mean, I'll admittedly, historically been horrible at other things in my life, like relationships haven't worked and other things haven't worked, but the music's always been there, so that to comfort me. And I'm happy that it does that for other people too. As for my longevity, I don't know. I just think that's a bit of my work ethic and tenacity and belief in myself. And, you know, messages and encouragement from all the people that you've talked to have left quotes. And when people say things nice on the radio or social media, things like that, it's a big boost. So I don't take any of that for granted. Even when people, you know, have something negative to say, at first, when I started this out, I was really hurt, but I'm not hurt anymore. I'm not for everybody. I know that.
Yeah, I don't think you want to be for everybody either, right?
No, I want to do my thing, and if it fits what you're jiving with, then great. If it doesn't, then great.
So I lied about Lonnie being the final quote. I have one final quote here, and this is from the last interview I did, my last guest. This episode launches tomorrow. This is from singer-songwriter Cassidy Taylor, who has a great last name. It's the Taylor takeover this week. My brother-in-law is a tailor, so he's happy. There's this whole Taylor takeover going on. So this is from Cassidy, who's an amazing young singer-songwriter. She says, I wrote a song with Julian once, and it was such an easy process. He's the kind of person who just loves music and wants nothing more than to share it with others. And you can genuinely feel that when you're in the room with him. I'm honored to have met him and to have worked with him. So that's Cassidy Taylor.
Thanks, Cassidy.
She's a sweetie. So as we wrap up, I like to finish the interviews with rapid fire questions. Are you good? I blast through these. You have quick one-word answers, okay, and we end perfectly on time. How about that?
Let's give her.
All right, rapid fire questions. When first starting, could you have ever imagined the level of success you've achieved in your career?
Absolutely not.
It's actually funny during rapid fire when you can't elaborate on that. It makes for a good answer. You do a lot of great cover songs. What are your top 3 favorite songs to cover?
Take Me to the River. Take Me to the River, for sure. Man in the Moon by REM. And Sitting on the Dock of the Bay was one of the first ones I ever did.
What are some of your favorite venues to play?
Horseshoe Tavern, for sure. Just finished off at the Grove Theatre in Finland, and those are like 2 hometown favorite places to play for sure. Commodore Ballroom in Vancouver is always fun. But yeah, there's more, but for sure. Those.
What's the biggest crowd you've played to, and what did it feel like playing to a crowd that size?
It was at the Watershed, which was the thing that happened in Walkerton when they had the water thing. What was that? That was in 2001. Well, Joe Cocker was a headliner, and the Guess Who were the co-headliner, and I think there were 30,000 people there. It was crazy. We got on, played like half an hour, and I felt so small.
You know, it's a big show when the Guess Who are the co-headliner.
Yeah.
That's probably a good bill to be on. What's the best live concert you've ever seen?
Ooh, Toots and the Maytals at Lee's Palace was pretty amazing.
Do you have an all-time favorite album? If you could just take one album to a desert forever and listen to it.
Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee's self-titled album for sure.
Do you have a favorite guilty pleasure artist? One that you just don't want anyone to know about? I like the Biebs. I'll be honest. I like Nickelback. There you go.
Okay. Guilty pleasure artist. Cyndi Lauper.
Ah, there you go. That's a good one. Are there any new artists that you think deserves our attention, that maybe should be bigger than they are and could use a boost that we're going to give them right now?
I think all new artists deserve our attention. Yeah, no, that's what I really feel like.
That's a good answer. What are the top misconceptions that people have about musicians?
That they're smart. Maybe that's not even a misconception at all.
Maybe that's true. What's the best advice you've ever received?
That it's not over until you say it is.
If you could sit down for a conversation with anybody living or dead, who would it be?
My grandfather.
That's another great answer. Are you into books and or video games? And if so, what are your favorites of all time?
Hmm. Okay, so NHLPA 2014. That one is pretty cool. They have a version of the 94 game now, so that's why I like it, because 94 was my favorite one. And my
That was
favorite,
that was a Super Nintendo game originally, I think, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was.
yeah.
And then my favorite book, oh, that's a tough one. Hmm. It might be The Catcher in the Rye because I keep going back to it, but The Alchemist I go back to as well. And yeah, I'm gonna go there.
Those are both great books. If you were wrongfully convicted and you were on death row and you had one final meal, what would that meal be?
Hmm. Fettuccine Alfredo.
Oh, you're making me hungry. Okay. Uh, final question. When you find yourself in a rut, what do you do to get yourself out of it as quickly as possible?
Hmm. Workout.
That's yeah, that's probably the best thing to do. So we're done the rapid fire questions, and we're on to the final two or three uh, deeper, more difficult questions. So when you look back on your life and career, what are you most proud of, and what are you most grateful for?
I'm most proud of the friendships that I've maintained and made throughout my life, and grateful for them because without those connections, without those friendships and those relationships, I would really actually have nothing to write about.
That's very true. So looking ahead at the rest of the year, we're just over halfway through the year. Do you have a vision for how you'd like the rest of the year to play out and maybe some goals that you're working towards?
Realistic goal, I would like to get in better shape and sleep better, eat better, and take care of myself a little bit better, for sure. I would like to try to make my life simpler because it seems that a lot is going on all the time. And I have a hard time, balancing some things and catching up on things. And I would just like it to be a lot simpler than it is. Um, I would love to see people gravitate to the new record and enjoy the music on the new record. And also recognize that it was a really hard record for me to write personally. And the things that I'm saying on the record are rather, I mean, even Seeds has a political charge to it, but it doesn't, knock down, doesn't come boiling down, but it does have that. And I think the whole record does have a coming of age sort of feeling to it. And I hope that people recognize that that's another part of life. I know that they recognize the earlier stages of life and the innocence and the beauty in the ridge. And I hope that they see that the struggle uh, in the next one is real.
What final
Three Grammy nods.
Three. Hey, throw it out. Let's throw it out into the universe. We're gonna put some good juju out there. So 3 Grammy nods. That's what we're going for.
A couple of Juno nods, 3 Grammy nods.
We'll settle with one. If just one Grammy nod comes in, we'll make it work, right?
4 or 5. Let's go there.
Yeah, 4 or 5. Okay, 4 or 5 with at least one win. We set it up. So, final question: what advice, if you could go back in time and sit down next to your 10-year-old self, what advice would you give to that cute little Julian Taylor to help him along the way?
I would probably tell that little 10-year-old boy that everything's going to be okay. And that friendships and family are the most important thing. And I've forgotten that sometimes in my life, and I've suffered because of it. And I think that, yeah, the most important thing is that, that it's okay tomorrow's another day.
So where can our listeners find you online? If someone's been listening for the last 2 hours and they want to maybe send a message saying, hey, love the interview, or hey, can't wait for the new album, where can they listen to the music? Where can everyone find you online?
JulianTaylorMusic.ca.
That's the central hub.
That's the central hub. Yeah.
And you can find his Instagram from there. You can find everything from there. So as we wrap up, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for your lifelong pursuit of mastery as a musician, as a singer-songwriter. I want to acknowledge you for dreaming big and having the courage to follow through with that dream that's led you to the heights of what you've achieved. I want to acknowledge you for being an inspiration, for writing positive music that affects people in all the right ways. And then last but not least, I want to say thank you as a fan, going all the way back to my 16-year-old self, sneaking on the radio, trying to hear further again. So thank you for 2 hours of your time. Thank you for answering all my fan questions. These are the questions I wanted to know the answers to. So I really appreciate it, Julian.
Thanks, Joel. I appreciate it too. I'm like always in shock that people feel the way they do, and because I don't think anything's really changed.
There you go. So Julian Taylor. So to our listeners, to the Julian Taylor fans, to the Staggered Crossing fans, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I'd love to hear from you guys. My goal is to grow this podcast organically, where you're giving me feedback on topics you'd like me to cover and guests you'd like me to interview. You can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Joel Martin Mastery. Joel is Joel, and on Twitter at Joel Mastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.